A lot is going on in the world that has got folks' attention here in North Carolina. It looks like the GOP is going ahead with a abortion ban. So that is one of the news items that I saw. And of course, we'll see if that legislation passes or doesn't. I think it's a 12-week ban or something in that space. I'm hoping that Sasha will be joining us because apparently the Russian President Vladimir Putin is claiming that Ukraine tried to kill him with drone strikes. So that is one of the latest things coming in that area. So there was a drone strike on the Kremlin, and apparently there are some thoughts that that was a effort by the Ukrainians to get to Mr. Putin and all in that space. At least that's what he is claiming, and all along those lines. And we've also had people that have talked about school shootings here in the United States, but guess what? It's not just in the United States, because apparently there was one recently in Belgrade. That's right. At least 9 were killed in a Serbia school shooting when a teenage boy opened fire at a Serbian school, killing 8 children and a security guard, according to what officials said in that particular region and all along those lines. And by the way, coming back to Russia, and I know that Serbia is in that general area as well, the U.S. is estimating that 100,000, I think that's the right number, I think I'm looking at the numbers right, Russian casualties in the Ukraine war in recent months. So that is a whole lot of casualties to be having in that area. And if Shaquille comes around, we're going to have to find out what he thinks about the Mother Nature apparently taking revenge on folks there in Australia. Because one of the stories that I found that was out of Australia was that there was a missing Australian fisherman's body found in a crocodile. And we do know that Crocodile Dundee was a very popular character there in Australia. So they definitely have their crocodiles. And apparently this crocodile was not too happy with the fishermen and all in that space. So definitely our sympathies go out to his family and all, but they did find the human remains inside the crocodile in Australia, and that is believed to belong to the missing fisherman. And definitely that is something that was going on as well. And the U.S. Navy has said that the Iran has seized its second oil tanker in a week and all in that space. And the Israeli army is trading fire with Gaza fighters. And some of that has to do with the Islamic Jihad member dying in custody, that being the gentleman Kadar Adnan. So that is something that I was also seeing in the news as well. And Marcos makes mark on foreign policy in a push for closer U.S.-Philippine ties. So he's over there meeting with President Biden, and apparently Biden has found a new friend in the fight against China. So that is something that is going on in that space. So they are definitely having conversations and all in that kind of way. And there is a massive international police operation that targets the Italian mafia. Yeah, that's right. That is going on. So I know that Nick has been to Italy, but apparently arrest and raids hit Italy's Ninderachta mafia group across Europe. So we did see that that was something that was taking place as well. So that is something that is going on. And apparently migrants are risking death as they're crossing into the U.S. desert alone from Mexico. And heavy rains and floods have killed at least 109 in Rwanda and 6 in the Ukraine. And speaking of folks that have been arrested, a man was arrested outside of Buckingham Palace days before the coronation of King Charles III. So Buckingham Palace is on lockdown after a man was arrested for throwing shotgun cartridges on it to the grounds. So that is something that is going on. And Brazil police have raided Bolsonaro's home as part of a COVID vaccine probe. So definitely other parts of the world can have some government intervention and some government intrigue as well. So that is something that is going on. And the last thing that I'll bring up, and I might get to some U.S. news interest as well. But I do know that we do have a media show, and Nick was letting me know about the media strike and all in that space. So that is going on. But I also saw that it is apparently a major holiday today that has to do with the media and some concerns around the media as well. Because one of the things that I didn't know is that today is World Press Freedom Day. That's right. It is World Press Freedom Day. And there have been articles that are talking about how global press freedom is under unprecedented attack. So there are definitely, we know, journalists that have been arrested, journalists that have been killed, journalists that have gone into a number of harm-ridden areas. And definitely that is a job that can sometimes be thankless, and definitely one that can also be dangerous at times as well. So today is World Press Freedom Day and all in that space. So I'm going to bring in Nick and all and see what he's got to say about World Press Freedom Day and all in that space. We've also got Shaquille with us, and we'll see if anybody else joins us. But today is World Press Freedom Day, and that is one of the stories that I saw, is that, we're trying to, I guess, make sure that the journalists get their just dues as well. So any thoughts around today being World Press Freedom Day? And apparently there's a notion that the global press freedoms are under attack around the world and all in that way. So any thoughts about today being World Press Freedom Day?
We can't hear you, Nick. We can't hear you.
Time. Freedom of press has limitation, because at the same time you saw that, how about this? I was listening to cyberbullying and its effects. So to what extent does the person who commits cyberbullying have the right to express their opinion or freedom of expression? So the thing is, it's not an absolute concept. At a certain point in time, freedom of the press or world press freedom has its limitations, and we can see this with the cyberbullying issues that take place. Now, my personal opinion, and this is where I think the media really screws up. Somebody gets on the thing, I got cyberbullied. Turn your bloody cell phone off. Oh, take some responsibility. Take some look, a lot of cases, it's a two-way street. I'm being cyberbullied. Turn your bloody cell phone off. I'm being cyberbullied. Turn your cell phone off, or press that bloody block button. And the media does a disservice by not showing there's, in some cases, simple solutions to cyberbullying. But you do have to take that you have to juxtapose this with World Press Freedom Day, because on the other side, you said, I got freedom of press. I can say anything I want. And that's not true.
Like you said, on the 30th World Press Freedom Day, journalists are set to discuss solutions on how to report in countries where press freedoms are eroding. So the numbers of journalists in prison worldwide has reached a 30-year high as at the end of last year, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. And the World Press Freedom Day on Wednesday coincides with Wall Street Journal reporters Evan Gershovitz's fifth week of detention in Russia. So she's been over there in Russia and has been detained for 5 weeks and all in that space. So we'll see if they make another trade or another deal.
Well, look, I'm a pretty staunch believer in freedom of speech and freedom of the press. I think the First Amendment in the United States is really important. But when and where should it be limited? When it comes to issues like cyberbullying, Nick, this is where I said a few months, last year, I think I said the tech companies are getting criticized for, not, like, for example, the Hunter Biden laptop was a big story, and they said, how dare the tech companies collude in order to suppress that story? But the tech companies are in a difficult position, because we've seen a lot of teens that have been really, really harmed by cyberbullies. We've seen them actually, self-harm as well as a result. And there was that young lady who passed away. There was that young man who I produced a movie based on a term, "and hero," that went sort of viral after he passed away. These are important issues, and if you want to hold tech companies to account, you can't then complain when they are allegedly suppressing information. I think that becomes difficult. But also when it comes to freedom of the press. What do you do if, for example, like when we all went into Iraq, that was, it was like a game show, wasn't it? We got to all watch it every night live. This is what we've done, and this is what's happening, and there was an unreality to it, really. But what happens when the media are reporting on something, which is, I think, one of the complaints about WikiLeaks? What happens when they're reporting on something that could potentially have damaging implications to a wartime strategy, or is potentially classified information that affects national security? What do we do? Well, there are some limits to freedom of the press. At the moment, I would say that journalists in Russia are probably having a hard time. There are other parts of the world where they're probably having a hard time, and it's sad to see them getting locked up for long periods of time. But I think that people need to be able to express their views. They need to be able to express a dissenting view. As regular viewers would know, Jatovy and I really went at each other a couple of days ago, but I don't dislike Jatovy. We just have a very strong difference of opinion on certain issues. But we should be able to have those dialogues. We should be able to have those arguments. I would never advocate for Jatovy not to be able to express his view, either to me, or about the positions that he thinks I have, whether I believe that he's characterizing my opinions correctly or not. He should be entitled to express his viewpoint. And if he was to advocate that people should kill me, well, okay, I would have a problem with that. I don't think that's legal, and if it is, it shouldn't be. But if he wants to vehemently disagree with me, well, he should have every right to do so. I mean, that's what freedom of speech is about. And we should be able to criticise politicians. We should be able to criticise government. And if we can't, then you never see what the opposing view is. Jatovy, you're up next.
I mean, one thing that we tend to do is when we talk about freedom of speech and freedom of the press is we tend to tie a business decision. For example, when people are banned from Twitter or people are banned from Facebook, we tend to say that, oh, well, my freedom of speech is being impeded on, being trounced or taken away. No, you just got a private company deciding that they don't like to have their name or anything tied to you for what you've said. That's not taking away their freedom of speech. That's not taking away their freedom of press. It's the same thing when there was a politician just recently that was fighting, that actually went to the Senate floor to complain that OANN or one of the super extreme right-wing channels wasn't on DirecTV. So they were threatening DirecTV to put OANN or one of the stations back onto whatever. I think it was DirecTV. But yeah, they were upset about that. That's not a freedom of the press issue. That's not a freedom of speech issue. That's just a private company making a business decision that they don't want to be tied to that network. So we've got to make sure that we always understand that there's a difference within that. And yes, there already are limitations on freedom of speech. For example, there are things that it's illegal for you to say. And I completely agree that nobody should be able to advocate or push for the harm of another individual. Hence the reason why a lot of companies do not put a lot of the hate speech that's out there, or the push the bigoted speech and so on and so forth, and allow those things on their network. So stuff like that, yes. Should a news station or a company decide to put that out there, that is at that company's liberty to put that out there. And that's where that freedom of the press and freedom of whatever happens. And in terms of it being squashed by the government, I mean, yeah, there are different countries, and even in the US, that it's kind of swayed and pushed, and people are persuaded to say particular things. For example, in China, there are different, Google, there are different versions of Google that are out there that you can't search and find particular things that are going on about the government. Same thing with Russia. Same thing, honestly, in the States, that happens at a very, very small degree. But there are things that you're not at liberty to see. And yes, it deals with, especially in the US, it deals with stuff going on. For example, if there are leaks out there dealing with the CIA and so on and so forth that you cannot find that are out there. But if you go hidden behind in a Discord chat room that somebody is set up that is leaking information to his friends and saying racist things, yeah, you can probably find something there. But no, I mean, the freedom of the press, yes, I'm all for freedom of the press. Get all the information out there. Cyberbullying is a different thing. Cyberbullying that's a different behemoth. You just can't tell somebody, hey, turn your phone off or jump off Facebook. Cyberbullying, the internet is around us everywhere. When people start cyberbullying you, that's a lot to it. It's a lot more complex. That's somebody throwing a whole mesh netting around you and words coming at you every which way. And then it causes a real problem and then leads to a lot of bad things, from suicide to, just tons of bad things. So yeah, cyberbullying is a tough net.
Toby, can I respond to a couple of things that you said there, if you don't mind? So you mentioned hate speech and you mentioned racism. I think my concern with those definitions is that different people have different limits on what they would consider to be acceptable or not acceptable. And I recognize what you're saying, that private companies may not want to be associated with certain speech. But, in today's world, the internet and those major tech companies is kind of the new public square. And so they're in a funny position legally where they have the right not to be held legally responsible for what's, pushed over the networks. But on the same token, they're supposed to, to regulate it or self-regulate it. And I think a lot of people feel as though that's being unfairly put out there. But if I can just go back a little bit when it comes to media, there was a major story that came out in Australia many years ago, probably 20, 25 years ago, back when I was a teenager. That was a report on the New South Wales police, and New South Wales is the state that Sydney is in. And that documentary, or that investigative report, was banned in New South Wales. If you lived in another state, you could watch it, but you couldn't watch it if you lived in New South Wales. Now, I thought at the time, and I continue to think now, that's completely wrong. Surely we should be able to, watch an investigative report about our government agencies, referring to the police as being government agencies. Surely we should be able to do that. And even if we don't agree with the conclusions, we surely should be able to. One of the things that we're seeing at the moment is a so-called war on misinformation. I don't necessarily think that there should be one. There's a group called the Flat Earth Society. I've watched some of their documentaries and some of their, speeches and stuff, and I think it's highly entertaining. I think that they ask questions that are interesting. I think they're completely wrong. I think it's just cuckoo to think that the Earth is flat. But if I'm in the right mood, I want to watch them. There was another conspiracy theorist called David Icke. I should be able to watch him. I should be able to hear him. I find it entertaining, and I don't really need somebody else to step in and say, well, we need to protect you from this misinformation.
Here's the problem with that. And to touch on the hate speech thing again, we all know what hate speech is. And
I don't think we do, Toby.
No, we do. We all know what hate speech is. And this goes back to, I guess, our discussion earlier. We're all intellectuals here. We all understand what hate speech is. It's actually even been defined. So we can all understand what hate speech is. So when companies, for example, 4chan and Stormfront, two giant forums that deal with a lot of, they revel in hate speech. And you're not going to find much of anything else besides QAnon conspiracy and a lot of, straight up hate speech, bigoted talk about anybody and everybody, hate towards African Americans, hate towards the Jewish individuals, hate towards the Chinese Americans, Japanese Americans. Just anybody and everybody. There's a ton of hate speech that goes through 4chan and Stormfront. That's why it's always brought up when people talk about it. So those companies are fine with it. They don't self-regulate. They allow that to happen. When Elon Musk wanted to be this, hey, I'm for freedom of talking about speech and you can say whatever. Well, when he took over Twitter, that's why they did the study and talked about how the N-word usage on Twitter jumped by 50%. And then guess what? Yes, even Elon Musk's Twitter started regulating that hate speech. So we understand what hate speech is, and and this is all tying into what you're talking about in terms of regulations about misinformation and so on and so forth. So we agree that no one should be able to advocate for the harm of anyone. That's what hate speech and misinformation leads to. And that's where that self-regulation comes into play. For example, when we won't even talk about your issue with the Australian article, because I am not informed on that. So I don't know if there was misinformation in there and that's why that entity decided to do it, or because that entity decided, hey, we don't want to talk about it.
No, it was the government that banned it. Sorry, just clarify, it was the government that banned it. It wasn't a private company.
I don't know if the
government
felt that it was misinformation about them, or if they decided, well, we just want to block it because we just don't like what they're saying. And
it was the latter. That the government blocked it because they felt that it would cause people not to trust the agency.
I cannot speak on that because I do not know the case, but I do know there are cases here in the States where, for example, there are a lot of conservative business owners that own media companies that do block and lean and actually push out misinformation around particular things to lead their audiences in a particular way. There was I forgot, there you can still find it on YouTube, for example. Somebody chopped up where there's a conservative media owner who runs half of the local media companies or news organizations up and down the East Coast. And there was actually somebody who put it on YouTube. You could actually chop it up to where they looked at I think it was like 6 o'clock news, and every single one of those news stations was saying the same right-wing talking point. And that was pushed out there. So that's part of that whole misinformation talking point that we're talking about. But with vaccines, for example, let me make this one point. Nick, you're on mute. But I
don't see where this is a right wing only, because they do this on the
I didn't say no. I'm just saying that was my example. That
that's
it was
one example.
Yeah, that's one example. I'm not saying that there isn't a left spin on some things as well. I'm not saying that. The majority does happen on the right wing because the right wing media base is larger than the left wing. And that has been proven because Fox has the largest news base out there.
You haven't listened to Rachel Maddow recently, I guess.
Rachel Maddow does not have the same media base as Tucker Carlson. We have the data.
Can I just respond for a second?
We have the data. No, hold on real quick, Shaq. Let me finish because Nick brought this up. Nick, we have the data on the actual people, the actual news bases. So we do know for a fact that Fox has the largest base. That is just a fact. It's not. I mean, we have that data.
Right.
Statistics are out there.
Have you ever given it any thought that maybe it's because this is what people want? Okay. And I know the left has a real problem with that. In other words, that.
What do you mean that people want?
In other words, okay, Jacoby, this is hard to comprehend.
Okay, so I was waiting to respond. You didn't want me to because you wanted to finish. And now you let Nick jump in.
Some people
Nick and I are
enjoy big government. Remember, our government.
Yeah, well, I'll leave you to discuss it, Jacoby. I'll see you guys later.
Some of the people don't like the fact that we have our healthcare system, which 20% of our GDP goes to spending on healthcare, and a lot of people like myself don't like the fact that the media, okay, and you could call it the left-wing media, which is major media in the United States, does so by ignoring these issues. In other words, show me where media discusses our healthcare being basically out of control in expenses. Okay.
Yeah, but
And
that's an easy
show me
one.
where
Nick,
they
just to
talk
push
about
back on that.
the
It's
government.
back on that.
They
answer is
they just
that
don't
doesn't sell. They have to show something what sells. Sex sells,
Yeah,
violence sells,
exactly.
wars.
I agree with you.
Exactly.
That
So,
does the sale.
so Nick, in
So
terms of
cells,
your,
violent cells.
in terms of your,
I'll give
so
you
what
an
I'm
idea
saying-
right here in Raleigh. Right here in Raleigh. Remember they had the science fair that I never heard of. Okay. Instead, this is the News Observer here in Raleigh. What they put on? How about a drag queen? That made the front page. You know the science? Throw that in the trash can because the
Science doesn't sell either.
the science fair in Chapel Hill was completely ignored. Instead, front page news was this bloody 7-foot drag queen. You know,
so there
there's here.
are issues with, so
There's issues.
what sells fear, sex, and all
Yeah,
that
but
stuff.
just
That is
because
true.
this is
But
supposed to be a
also,
newspaper. They're not
just to
supposed to
touch
sell
on-
me,
just to
Jacoby.
touch
They're
on the-
supposed to give me news, not
They
sell
do.
me.
You know what sells
do.
better
And
than
I'm not interested
So
in the
with
7-foot
Nick,
You know what
just
sells
to touch
better
on-
than sex?
Yeah, just
A
to touch
lot
on your
more
thing
sex. That's what sells better.
with Fox in their
7-foot drag
base.
queen.
With Fox in their base, I get that some people, not all of them, want to watch Fox because they feel that Fox tells them the truth, even though that Fox has already admitted they lie. They're gone to court for that, so they don't tell the truth. So what a lot of people that there are some that sit there and watch Fox News because they feel that the other stations don't give them the truth. But there are a lot of people that watch Fox News that believe in conspiracies, that actually watch Fox News for those conspiracies, that watch Fox News for that hatred that they spew, that watch Fox News because they feel they are so tribalistic that, hey, this is what I'm watching. It's also on top of the fact that they watch Fox News because that's the only thing on in the middle of the hotel or in the middle of the actual auto parts store that they have, because the owner believes that Fox is what is true. So it's not the fact that these viewers, that viewer base is just hates because they have these conservative viewpoints towards the healthcare system or whatever. Because half of them, when you tell them actually what's in the healthcare system and the actual individuals that they agree with a lot of the actual positions that are in, for example, the Obamacare. So a lot of people believe in that. But if you title it that this is what they wanted, for example, Obamacare was built off of Mitt Romney's thing that was going on in Utah in the first place. So the Republicans already agreed with it. So it's not that they're watching Fox News because Fox News is this bastion of hope for them. A lot of people end up watching Fox News because that's the only thing that they get. They have an older viewer base that has been trained to watch Fox News.
I'm going to give you a good example.
We can't say that it's because of their positions always. That's not true.
I would like to remind you, in the first days of COVID, I'm talking about the end of February in 2020.
Hey, Harlan, you didn't get in?
Now, it was
It's on camera.
at that time.
On cam.
What's happened? Okay.
At
At that time, I was on a cruise ship in Latin America with our friends from Israel. We were there going already back toward Buenos Aires from Montevideo. And at the dinner time, they asked me, so what's happened? What's the latest what's happening with the COVID? I said, I just watched before, and on a ship, only Fox News was available, nothing else. So I was watching Fox News, and I tell them, well, I was watching Fox News, and they said that everything is under control, there is no such thing, and so on and on. It's exactly what they said at the time. You know what was their reaction? The reaction was, take your Fox News and shovel in your ass, because they are lying. It's all over the world now. There is a quarantine already in several countries. What are you talking about? I was quiet after that because what could I say?
Well, I got to watch it when I was in Utah because we don't watch it here in North Carolina. But my friends in Utah, they all watch Fox News. It's like they love Fox News. Okay. And I got to listen to two of the people, and they were educated people. One went to University of Virginia Law School. But when you listen to it, it was like, oh, this Republican's going to win, blah, 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 the Arizona race, blah, 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 100% guaranteed, da, 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 da. And she was just rapping on. I mean, she was, she could have been, who's this person, Francisco Franco in Spain, just so right-wing crazy. And I was going, she doesn't seem to be, and this was just my opinion, very unbiased about her reporting, because nobody in their right mind, and granted, she did graduate from University of Virginia Law School. How she got in, I don't know, but would say 100% in a bloody election that was really tight. Reality struck, though. Her person that was 100% locked to win lost the election. This was like election night. And Fox News, I was going like, why would anybody watch it? These people are rabid idiots. So I don't watch it. It's just, and then I see Rachel Maddow on the other side, same thing, really cocky. And I'm going like, okay, so sure of herself, but a lot of cases she's wrong. And I'm going like, I want to hear news. I don't want to hear people's bloody opinions, but I can see there's a lot of people that obviously are the one have big ratings that love to listen to people rap on talk television, which is what we do here. Since we had last year 2.3 million people view our shows, but we have a lot of shows and we run a lot of places. Now with that, the writers are on strike now, which is shutting down all the major media here in the United States. But then I was asking Mark, I said, well, how many of our shows have script writers? And I think the answer is no, none. And the ones that do write their scripts, they themselves, the producer of the show writes the scripts. So we're not going to get shut down. Oddly enough, we're not getting shut down during the writer's strike.
Confirms that. I'll tell you who else is not on strike.
Who?
The Russian idiots are not on strike. They've invented the story that Ukrainians sent drones to kill Mr. Putin.
Oh, really? So that's all fabricated.
Yeah, it's just, I just saw it on CNN just 5 minutes ago.
I just mentioned it at the beginning.
So what's happened is there are two little drones that they cannot fly 600 kilometers from Ukraine all the way to Moscow, and not just Moscow. They were shoot right on the top of the Kremlin, the palace where Putin sometimes. But he's not there. He's somewhere else. So this is a pure Russian propaganda, which they invented. This so-called drones be shoot out right in front of Kremlin. So then they would say that they are now ready to start thermonuclear war against all West, because most likely West was masterminding this, and they supplied the drones, and they gave the directions where and how to fly. So now we are going ballistic, and there is nothing will stop us. Idiots!
Steve, you're coming at us from DC.
That's what they
Hey,
are.
baby.
There were no drones in Moscow.
I'm draining the swamp, buddy. I'm draining the swamp.
Okay.
Is
Hey,
that a
let me
real
walk.
background, Steve? Where
No,
are you
let
at?
me walk to
He's
my.
in DC.
I'm sorry I was late, guys. I had some meetings up on the hill today, but I'm. Give me 1 second. I want to show you the view, and then I'll do the rest of.
Yeah, I want to
World
see the
Edition.
view on the hill.
I'll do the rest of World Edition as the host of the show from our nation's capital.
Oh my Lord!
Hallelujah!
Oh, no!
Sorry I was late, guys. The senator let me out.
Hallelujah!
I got a meeting in the White House tonight too. I won't let it get to my head.
No.
Toby, it's great to see you guys. And this is Steve Rao live on P.O.D TV's The World Edition. I'm sorry I'm late.
This is
yes.
Steve. This is a breaking news. Sorry, I was trying to say something about whatever Moscow stuff. This
guys, I'm
breaking news.
getting used to it up here. I'm like up here getting every nook and cranny and bobbing and weaving my way with the best of them up here in the capital city. But and there's Shaquille Latimer laughing to the bank. But anyway, here we go, guys. So I'm live from Washington, D.C.
Hey,
Okay,
Steve.
keep going. Keep going.
Steve. Just so you know, we can issue you media passes, and then you can go into their crazy room and ask the president spokesperson questions.
Well,
Because obviously the president can
they're out
answer.
of session today. But I didn't get to do my monologue, but I'll close out this evening with just some things why I'm here. But what I will tell you today, that they are out of session. But the big issue in the room, which we should talk about today, is the debt limit. So what I'm hearing is, Democrats, they want to raise the debt ceiling, but the Republicans want them to slow down spending, and it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. This evening, I'm meeting the Indian ambassador, who's hosting the largest delegation from India at the Select USA conference, and Governor Roy Cooper and a number of governors in the U.S. will be there with me, along with many senators and congressmen. And I'll be meeting the ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti, who is the former mayor of Los Angeles. He was just sworn in. Took him 2 years to get it done. So that's going to be some news we can talk about tomorrow. Actually, I'll be probably Friday. And I'll close out with some insights. Sorry to interrupt the show, but I thought since I'm here in the Capitol, why don't we talk about our nation and focus on U.S. policy today? And by the way, breaking news: they did find the gunman in Texas, and that's breaking news. And then also we've got what other breaking news do we have? On Ukraine, Russia, lots of Russian deaths in Ukraine. Correct, Sasha? That's what they're reporting.
Well, there is a breaking story now because you are walking somewhere in the middle of nowhere. So there is a breaking story that apparently 2 Ukrainian drones were sent to Kremlin to kill Mr. Putin personally. And Moscow now says that it was most likely instigated by the West. They are preparing to launch thermonuclear attack against all Western countries and whoever is helping Ukraine. And this is a breaking story. And right now, but this is because Russians, they were lying lately so much, and not only lately, they're lying now for about 1,100 years non-stop. So nobody believes them anymore. Nobody's taking that for granted. They could just stage it themselves and use it for propaganda and so on. So that's where we are. That's what's happening.
By the way,
Yes.
I tend to think
Well,
I
keep
tend to
going,
think
guys. I
that
want to
something
watch from
like
the other
that has
side.
the
and
hallmarks
everything,
of.
but Nick, in case you did not know, this is, and I know you have, I think the animal's name is Tilly. I know that Toby has got a dog, and I forgot the dog's name, but this is ironically National Pet Week, and that is why Joanna is here, because she is definitely somebody that speaks regularly about National Pet Week, and this is actually going on starting on May 7th and running through the 13th. So a lot of folks, I used to have some pets, and I used to even do some cat setting and all in that space, but definitely a lot of times we have to give support to our animals as well. So Joanna, if you'll share a little bit about what National Pet Week is. I know that we've got Steve up there in DC, so I know that it is a DC initiative and all in that space, but if you can share a little bit about National Pet Week and what we can do to make our pets happier and all in that space.
Well, all I know is that it's an opportunity. It's a week-long celebration of our love for pets, and who doesn't love their pets? Which it's a little odd because I do believe that we love our pets all year long. But I'm glad that we make time, specific time for acknowledging the really important role that our pets, regardless of what type of pet it is, and people have all sorts of pets. I should know. I've photographed 27 different species of them. What an important role they play in our lives. They humanize us. They prioritize our lives. They don't know from bad bosses in traffic. They just want treats and let's play and love me. And I think that an entire week to remember that is what our world needs right now. And that's why I wrote a book.
Can I ask you? You said you've photographed 27 different species. Other than people that have pet rocks, what is the weirdest pet that you've photographed?
The most unique, probably bearded dragon, snakes, but donkey. I've photographed donkeys, birds of all types. rats, pig, a pot-bellied pig, a 200-pound pot-bellied pig. Um, they're all sorts. And what's really fascinating is the relationship that people have between all these different species. Uh, and that's what my book is about. It's a book of photographs of notable people with their pets. And they're not just your average pet portrait. These are relationship portraits. I call them portraits of love because it really takes all these little moments that people have between their pets and themselves, and it's unique to each person. So people like Ed Begley Jr. and Ed Asner and Adam Schiff and Norman Lear and all these really well-known people. Everybody celebrates their love or expresses their love in their own unique way, but equally tenderly and intimately with their pets, regardless of the species.
Now, I understand that part of this coffee book that you've got and everything is going to be used to protect a animal that isn't necessarily a pet, because I understand that part of it is going to support the Apex Protection Project, which is a Los Angeles-based nonprofit that is going to save the wolf species through education, rescue, and advocacy. So I was
Yes.
wondering if you could share a little bit about what that organization is and how you got involved with them as well.
Right. They were brought to my attention from through friends, and they have become friends as well. They have a one of the most successful. They're still pretty small, but they're really small and mighty. And yes, as you said, they are dedicated to protecting the wolf species, which is an apex predator, and therefore the name of the organization, Apex Protection Project. And I think the simplest way to explain the importance of this apex predator is when you look at the story of Yellowstone, which in the 30s eradicated wolves from the park, and the park began to die. And when they reintroduced the wolves, suddenly, miraculously, it began to recover. Now, wolves aren't solely responsible for the recovery, but in large part responsible. They rebalanced the ecosystem. And that was really important to me. I really looked for something that had a cause and effect because I felt that that was important in our time to see something where we could put our attention on something and have a direct, measurable result. And I'm hoping that my book does that as well, bringing love, back to our. It touches the heart. Everybody who looks at these pictures, they all go, "Oh," they touch their heart, and that is really important to me. I think it can help people, arm people with a tool to get back into your heart and go out into your daily life by in a manner that is loving and kind and supportive and patient, instead of going out there antagonistic and angry and combative. And so that's my little, my little hope, what my little grain of hope is for this book.
No, it sounds good. The title of the book is called In Good Company, Notable People with Their Pets. I was
Mhm.
wondering what is the most unique relationship you saw with a pet and one of these notable people? Because you mentioned a couple of them, like Ed Asner. I know that there
Yeah,
are pictures in there with Justine Franks, Tracy
yeah.
Gluck, David Koz, and a number of others as well. So what is one of the most unique relationships you
Unique,
saw with a
unique.
person and their pet?
So unique in that's a really tough question to answer. I think that they're all unique because they all express their love in their own way. I can tell you that I thought Justin, it's funny that you should mention Justin Frank because his dog loves frozen bread. And I don't know if you got a chance to see the photo of Justin with his Portuguese water dog. And there's a Portuguese water dog who's afraid of water. So we got a picture of Justin in the pool and Teddy on the side going, "Don't come back out," and then also jumping for his frozen bread treat. Um, in, it's hard for me to answer which is the most unique relationship, simply because for me they're all unique in their own way, right? So. Uh, they're different. Like Adrienne Wilkinson, she had a tiny little dog who was passionate about watermelon, and we had a little tug of war with the watermelon. And also she also meditated with him, so we also got a picture of him sitting in her lap meditating. So there, you know, it's that's a tough question for me to answer. Yeah.
Wait a minute. So wait, I'm trying to back up here. So the dog was actually meditating because I know a lot of us have been getting into humans meditating. So you're telling me that the dog was meditating
Yeah,
as well.
he was sitting in her lap and he had his little paw on her arm and they were just sitting there meditating together. Yes.
So the dog was doing some meditation as well. That's an interesting
Yeah.
concept. Now I mentioned that Nick and Jatovi, and I don't know whether Shaquille and Shaq or even Steve have pets. As a matter of fact, I think Steve does. But would there be a possibility of a Pod TV pet book with pictures of folks that have pets? Maybe I'll go and get me a pet and us being photographed by you and
You
our
know, I'm working
respective
on a
pets.
second book, so yes, I'm going to do. Oh yes, Nick. Oh, is that a whippet?
It's a dachshund. Actually, she's
Oh
kind
really?
of
I'm
a
only seeing
dachshund
from
and
here up. So,
a little dachshund, a little chihuahua. But
oh, that is so sweet.
she thinks she's really
I want to do a in my follow-up book, notable podcasters and their pets. So y'all go out there and get pets now, and and we'll do that. But
If there's any
I
legislation,
I travel too frequently for it to be fair for me to actually have a pet, but my former mother-in-law would certainly classify as a bearded lady, I'm sure.
yes. Wait, and Steve, this is one of my favorite locations. If you could have a pet right there in front of the Capitol, that would be
well,
awesome.
I just had a quick meeting with Senator Booker. That's why I had to tip. I'm meeting him later today. But if there's any legislation that I can advance for pets, just let me know. Just shoot me an
Oh
email.
my goodness!
I'm right
Yeah.
here. The Senate is in session, by the way, folks. Senate is in session, and the House is out of session. So I've been, but it's great to be up here in the capital city. Really enjoyed your commentary. You're being a guest on the show, and we'd like to talk a little bit more about these issues. So
while you're there, Steve, clearly this recent, Joanna, clearly this recent thing that's passed through the House is going to sort of be COA when it gets to the Senate. I would be, from an economic perspective, I'm really concerned about this game of chicken that they're playing. Democrats and Republicans are playing with this debt limit, and I think the reports come out saying that there's a potential for a default to occur as early as June 1st. We can't have this. And it's not about Democrats, Republicans. It's both of them. They need to get together. They need to sort this out. And it's not fair on Americans, and it's not fair on the rest of the world that have invested their money in the United States for this to be driven to the wire like this.
Yeah, I was speaking to my father last night, actually. I texted him and my mother from here. I was on the steps at nighttime. It was beautiful. And my father made the same point. It's almost like the boy who cried wolf. You get to the point where you keep saying this every June. And then, we're going to shut the government down. And it's this classic using it as kind of political leverage rather than us doing right. And David Walker has talked about this, debt being something that we just, so Shaquille, I couldn't agree with you more. And that's the sense.
Well, I think there's a difference, though, isn't there, between a US government shutdown? Because if I'm sitting in Australia or the UK or in Europe, why do I care whether there's a government shutdown? There's a difference between that and the potential for a debt default. I don't think I think that's a bit overblown. I think there'd be enough resources to make the interest payment. But the fact that that's even being touted and being pushed around as a political strategy, it's ridiculous. It should not be happening. And as I said, it's unfair on Americans and it's unfair on everybody else around the world that invests in the United States.
You get a little bit of static there, Steve, and everything. I hear what you're saying, and we'll definitely continue that. I did just want to share really quickly a couple of the pictures that are there as well. I think this is actually Ed Begley and all in that space, so definitely want to share some of the pictures.
I'm sorry?
Of what Joanne has got going.
As I'm muting my mic as I'm walking, but Mark, keep me on because I'm going to close at another site, Mark. My closing comments, okay?
Went on and all in that kind of way, and I'll try to bring up some of the other
ones. I just wanted to, say that, Steve, I was wanting to do a book called House Dogs, and I already have, I have Adam Schiff is in there, Speaker, Congresswoman Jackie Spears in the book, is Congressman Eric Swalwell. So I wanted to do a book of congressmen There's that's Begley Jr. with his dog Bunny. I don't know why people call their dogs another species. There's a dog in there called Moose, and there's another dog in there called Monkey. So it's odd, but uh, getting back to, I mean, just kind of tying this into what Steve and Shaquille were talking about is we are in such an antagonistic place that we can't even talk to each other anymore, much less negotiate. We need to get back to a place of compassion and communication and understanding, and all of those things are related to the heart chakra, to your heart energy. So while this is not the answer to our political problems, it is certainly a tool to create the possibility for communication. So tie that into the political commentary and if you wanted to check out this book and start your
Well,
heart healing
I,
process.
This
I
looks like
think
a
I
great
think
picture of an
Joanna.
animal with a very big
Joanna,
dog.
I think if the political corridors of power were filled with cats and dogs, and when it
Yes.
went to a vote, it was the most amount of cats that meowed versus the most amount of dogs that barked that determined the issues, I think would be far better off personally.
Whoever can lift their leg higher, right? It's just how it goes. But
well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
absolutely, folks. We're getting ready for closeout in a few minutes.
Yeah,
We're
get ready to
walking
close
to
out
my
very
next
shortly.
destination.
Joan, I was glad you were able to come in. If you had any last minute thoughts before we get to Steve's closeout, and I was showing some of the
Oh yeah,
other
no
pictures of
problem.
some of the other animals and all in that space. I mentioned earlier that there was some people that have animals that are pets that we don't consider to be pets, because I had actually earlier mentioned that there was a alligator that had a very negative fate with somebody in Australia, and I do know that there are sometimes folks that wasn't an alligator, it was a crocodile, that have unusual pets in that space. So I just wondered if there were any dangerous pets that you wish people didn't have.
I guess snakes could be dangerous, but depends on the snake. I mean, I did shoot with a python once, but because they're pets and because they're being around people and acclimated to being around people, they were not dangerous. I suppose any animal in its wild state could be dangerous, including cats and dogs. So that's Norman Lear with his cat and dog. The and there are 75 photos in the book representing seven different species, 8 different species. Now I'm losing track. And it's available worldwide on any online bookstore. Also, if you want to walk in and order it from your local bookstore, you can do that as well.
And
And
so
I
this
can
is
I
Adam
can
Schiff,
I can
apparently
certainly
in
say, as I do with every author that comes on, I've already purchased your book off Amazon. It is available in Australia and New Zealand for those people that live over here and in the UK. Now, let me ask you a question. My friends involved in the film industry say that the worst things to work with are animals and children. How long did it take you? What was the longest amount of time it took you to get the animal to actually, the pet to actually come into the shot and be ready to be photographed?
Um, well, for the book, okay, so I've been doing this for over 12 years and I've got it down to a science. My shoots rarely last longer than an hour, and that's from the time I drive up to the time I drive away. And I don't just show up at someone's house with my camera and my lights. There's a whole intake process. I come up with a concept first. So once that's gelled in my head, then we go, and then I the intake. What does your pet like to do? So I come up with a concept that involves uh, activities and behaviors and things that pet is already comfortable doing. We're not trying to reinvent the world or teach them new tricks. So the way it goes is I arrive, we set up and add the pet at the very last minute. So the actual shoot with the pet itself is less than 5 minutes normally. So it's very fast once the pet is added in. And then we're done. And I would say in about 90% of the time, I get the picture that I had envisioned in my concept.
Hey,
So
Joanna, was there ever any
pets are
times
well
that your
behaved
pet
and go
was
along with your vision.
I'm sorry.
The pets are well behaved. They go along with your vision. They're not putting up any bad behavior while you're trying to photograph
No,
them.
no. My cardinal rule, my prime directive is never stress the pet. So if the pet doesn't want to participate, then we just don't do it. That's only happened once in 12 years. And most of the time, because we're not doing anything that's uncomfortable or weird or different, the pet is a very willing participant. And so they're just doing the thing that they normally do, which is why these shoots are so special and different. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and begin my closeout. Is that okay?
Yep, so perfectly fine and everything. So definitely you can begin that. I was showing some of the pets.
Okay, go ahead. Before we begin, thank you so much for being with us again. Where am I standing in front of?
The Supreme Court.
There you go. There we go.
Yeah,
So
the
I am in
Supreme
front of the
Court.
United States Supreme Court. And as I close out this monologue today, the one thing that I will tell you, first of all, for those of you just joining, I'm Steve Rao, the host of P.O.D and Roku TV. And today I greet you live from the capital city of the United States of America, Washington, D.C. As I've noticed, as I walk the halls of Congress and look at the Senate, I see a very divided America. You know, it's just not the way it used to be. We're really drawing lines between ourselves and our parties. And in fact, I'm trying to meet Senator Manchin later today, who's actually initiating a group called No Labels. And actually, there's rumors that he may be the presidential candidate for that party. But I wanted to say today that as I close out this message, just for all of us around the world to think about the United States Supreme Court, or they call the Supreme Nine. This body of government in the United States is in Article 3 of our Constitution. And the court has always been a symbol in America. Whether you go to Marbury versus Madison and judicial review, you go to Brown versus Board of Education, where they overruled segregation, you go to voting rights. The surprise decision when Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts issued the majority opinion in allowing for gay marriage for the LGBT community. And of course, the surprise of many of us when in the Dobbs v. Jackson case, they overturned Roe versus Wade. The Supreme Court today is looking at a lot of other cases, some coming from North Carolina. The voter ID law is now back in place in North Carolina. And gerrymandering could also be at stake as they draw new maps. But the bottom line is this court has always been a symbol of America, and the polling shows that this court is at an all-time low approval rating. I think it's time to consider reforms of our Supreme Court. Perhaps getting the Democratic and Republican parties to get so away from these candidates who are supposed to interpret the law. Maybe it's having term limits so they're not aging to be so old, to 80, 85, 90 years old. Why can't we have retirement limits? There are other many Western democracies that run their courts differently. But at the end of the day, I stand before this court, and the title says equal justice under the law. I consider myself lucky as an American that we have a court. I've always considered myself lucky that we have a court that can interpret the law. I just hope that we can get away from politicizing the court for future generations. And that's really my closing remark. We've got a few more minutes. We can open up for 2 minutes of insights. But this is Steve Rao from the United States Supreme Court. Couldn't think of a better way to end P.O.D and Roku TV's World Edition than from the capital city. So, folks, it's been an honor. And we got 2 more. The floor is yours. I yield the floor to the distinguished gentleman from Jatovi. What are your final thoughts as we close out today?
We could all stand a better chance to just listen to each other.
There you go. There you go.
Yep.
Any
Definitely need to
final
listen
thoughts?
to each other.
Well, the
And
funny
like you
joke
said,
is, yeah, listen to each other.
Well,
And
I have a final thought from the other side of the world. Just because you get a few decisions from the Supreme Court that you don't agree with doesn't mean the Supreme Court needs to be reformed. And just because the executive part of your government and the legislature is really divisive, it doesn't mean that there's something inherently wrong with the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I agree.
It'll be interesting to see because there are even things that are taking place here in the North Carolina and other legislatures that will be making their way to the Supreme Court. I'm sure that the whole notion of how long the terms that are accepted in the abortion debate, because North Carolina just made some new rules about that. I think it's 12 weeks and all in that space will be something that will eventually make its way to the Supreme Court. And whether that is decided one way or the other, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Joanne, I know you know more into the pets than the politics, but if you had any final thoughts, I will yield the floor to you. Just if you have any final thoughts in general, maybe we can learn from our pets around the world as to how we can handle life better. But I will yield the floor to you.
I will echo what Steve said and what other guests have said is we need to listen to each other more, and that requires more love. And there is no better tool than to look at your pet and look them in the eyes to get you to a place of love. And hopefully we can all agree that that is the direction we need to go in. So anything that helps you get to a place of love, and if you buy my book, that'll help you too. But yes, absolutely, we are moving away from love, and I think that we need to move towards it.
Well, my final remark is when I ran into Senator Booker today, I was joking. I said I represent North Carolina's 15th congressional district. Well, guess what? We don't have a 15th congressional district, but he called me Congressman Rao twice. So I gotta tell you, folks, as I close out the show, anyone that tells you this town isn't addicting for a politician is lying.
Yeah.
Because once you get the DC in you, you can't get it out of you. This is an exciting place.
Are you announcing
Have
your
we lost you, Steve? Is that what this means? Have we lost you for good now? Is that's what's happened? You're in the Oval Office, then you're in DC. We've just lost you, haven't we?
No, I'll never be. As my mother told me last night, I tell you, she freaked out when I texted her from the Capitol. She goes, "Oh my God, what have we done?" But no, as I always told my mother, hey, I'll always do the right thing. Love you guys. See you Friday.
Love
Be
you,
safe
Steve.
wherever you are around the world. From our family to yours, this is Steve Rao hosting the edition from Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. Thank you all so much. See you soon.